Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Grow Yourself from the Inside Out. Most of you who know me know I'm a coach. And as a coach, I talk a lot about mindset, quite frankly. It's because it's part of life. It's part of growing. It's really the first, premise in life to sort of have your mindset right. And so if you want to achieve a goal or do something that's really important, the mindset, a good mindset is essential. Well, I got to tell you, my guest here takes the whole thing of mindset to an entirely different level. And in fact, he's a very accomplished mindset coach, and I'm going to introduce you in just a moment. But so we're very fortunate to have him to discuss these ideas that's going to help all of us. And he will also share some tips and some techniques about how you can improve your mindset and ways to pursue your potential, if you will. And so in saying that, let me just first introduce to you who my guest is today. So Christian Straka, he's an international coach for pro athletes, but for the past decade, his focus has turned to mindset training for peak performance, and to which he incorporates in his role as a global mindset coach for Adidas Runners, as well as coaching personal and corporate clients. Christian has been practicing mindfulness for many years. In fact, he has developed a unique approach to mindset training using evidence-based mindfulness techniques, which we will ask him about. He is also a unified mindfulness L2 coach, a member of the mindfulness facilitation program at UCLA's Mindfulness Awareness Center at the Semel Institute for Neuroscience and Human Behavior, and he is a member of the International Mindfulness Teachers Association. As a coach for pro athletes, Christian has in-depth expertise in professional tennis, both as a player on the international circuit, as well as a coach for professional level players. As a coach, he was the head pro for the Hofstra Tennis Academy, which is in Spain, but he was training the German national team. He also coached multiple top 10 players throughout his career, his tennis career. In fact, and their career, I should say. In fact, he was a personal coach for Victoria Azarenka, who was former number one, and Andrea Petkovic, who was former world number two. And as a mindset coach, Christian was also Mike Bryan's mental performance coach when he won the ATP Tour World Championship in 2018. Christian was also the mental performance coach of the Adidas TSP team that broke the world record running from Los Angeles to Las Vegas. That's right. And by the way, if you don't know who Victoria Azarenka is, or Andrea Petkovic, or even Mike Bryan, I mean, at least two of them, but I would suggest three of them are legends in their own way. And so it's exciting to have someone here who not only teaches it, but has experienced it as a very high level. So I would like to now welcome my guest, Christian Straka. Christian, thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you so much.
You're what you do for a living, I find it extraordinary. You help people go to another level in their career. And certainly I would love to hear about your successes as a coach, as a mindset coach, and, for athletes, but also maybe to talk about how, maybe just the average person can use this to improve their lives, whether it's pursuing a goal or their performance or whatever the case might be. But before we get started, would you please just tell the viewers a little bit about you, where are you from, where you grew up, and just the trajectory to where you're at today as a coach?
Okay, so I'm originally Czech. I grew up in Germany. My parents fled, communist Czechoslovakia back in the day, and I grew up in a little town called Bad Hersfeld, where I met my wife when I was 9 years old. And
that's pretty early to get married, but whatever, we
met, and then 13 years ago, we did everything.
Very nice.
So I kind of started playing tennis from a very early age, from when I was 4. My dad was a former pro athlete. He used to play volleyball, and I pretty quickly kind of realized that I had a certain talent for tennis, and I also enjoyed it very much. So I kind of went to this tennis trajectory. I started playing tournaments, like in any other sport, if you're work hard and you have some natural given talent and you combine the two and you spend enough time, then, hopefully it's going to go somewhere kind of interesting for you as an athlete for some time. And that was the case for me. I was playing competitively in the national circuit in Germany. Then it went into the international circuits as a junior still. Wow. Then I, played with Federer when we were 16, 17 at the Australian Open. We played doubles together. And then when I went into the pro tour, I pretty quickly kind of had an injury on my arm that resulted in them removing my first rib, my top rib. So I had to stop my career pretty early when I was like 20-ish. And then that resulted in me ending my career and kind of looking like, what am I going to do? I had no idea what I was going to do, what I wanted to do, right? And my mentor and coach kind of suggested to me that coaching might be something interesting for me. And I was like, it never hit me to that point that I would ever coach anybody in anything. So I was like, kind of, why not? I was really not, I didn't want to go to school. I hated school so much. And then I realized, like he said, that I absolutely loved coaching. And I had a natural gift there also. And I was able to explain things in a way that people could understand easily out of my own experience, but also intellectually and technically. So from a very early age, I kind of started coaching. So when I was coaching Azarenka, for example, and she was a junior at that time, and she became number 1 in the world while I was traveling with her and winning the Australian Open and the French Open and so forth. I was so young. I was younger than most of the players on tour.
Oh, wow.
Not the junior players, obviously, but the professional players, there's some that are 20-ish in the mid-20s, but a lot of them are in the late 20s, 30s. And I was coaching already, and it was going well. And at that time, however, I also realized that all of these people that I'm coaching, whether it is pro athletes like Azarenka, or it was recreational players or ambitious juniors, that their physical skills and their technical skills were not what was holding them back to really perform at their optimal level as often and for as long as they would like. And because they couldn't do that as often as they would like, they were getting either very frustrated when it wasn't happening, or they were getting anxious before it was even happening because they were worried it's not going to happen. Right. And that really was one of really many different instances that made me realize over time, there was not like a one event where I was like, okay, so this is really something that basically is something that everybody is struggling with. Everybody, whether you're a recreational player or whether you're a pro athlete, the issue of you not being able to perform at your optimal level, whatever that optimal level is something that everybody has. And that was something that I experienced in my professional and junior career also. I was the perfect example for that. So it started to be very important to me. To be like, why could I not do that? Why can they not do that? And that kind of got me onto this trajectory of like mindset training, mindfulness, and so forth.
I just find this fascinating that because I matter of fact, I just did a keynote last week about going from limited to limitless, and I use that more as a paradigm because I'm not a mindset coach per se, but the idea of things that hold people back from I don't know about peak performance, that's your expertise, but certainly, moving to another level or going past where they think they can go or achieving where they can. What is it, sort of generally speaking, that just stops people dead in their tracks from taking things to another level? Can you sum that up somehow? What's the one thing that stops people from performing better. Let's just say performing better, because peak performance is a whole different game, I think.
Well, I don't know what you mean with peak performance, but I was referring to optimal performance, and your optimal performance is your optimal performance. It has nothing to do with whether you are the best in the world or you're just beginning. Whatever it is that you can do theoretically already, right after just started training in whatever activity, whatever sport you're in, or you've been doing this for 20 years and you're one of the best professionals in the world. Every single person has a optimal level of performance on any given day, right? Just the optimal level between you and me and Serena is very different. But nonetheless, we have an optimal level that we could theoretically accomplish today if everything goes perfect. We can't accomplish a level that we haven't gotten to yet. Okay. Yeah. So I'm focusing with the mindset training on really allowing you to reach your optimal level today, now, for longer. So to get there and then to stay there for as long as possible, and not to get to a level that you haven't even accomplished yet.
Yes. Very interesting. And I appreciate that distinction. You know, I don't know if there's a difference, but to your point, I get it that, you know, each person has a different optimal level. Well, let me ask this before we go on. You know, how do you define sort of mindset and mindfulness in this sort of arena that you hang out in? How do you describe this to people?
So mindset and mindfulness, I would not put synonymously, for sure. Okay, mindset is a much broader term where many different things fall into. Mindfulness is already a very broad subject also.
Yes, it is.
But we can definitely define mindfulness more narrowly than mindset. So in mindset, I would include breathwork exercises, for example, right? That in mindfulness, breathwork has nothing to do with mindfulness. You could be mindful while you're doing breathwork, but breathwork isn't mindfulness. That's an important distinction, right? Yes. But if generally speaking, mindset, it depends on your definition of mindset, right? And that is very broad. Anything that basically has a positive impact on your mindset in general. That can be light exposure regularly at the right time of the day. It can be cold exposure. It can be breath work. It can be physical exercise, has an impact on your mindset, right? It doesn't matter if you're a professional athlete or you just do yoga once a week. Whatever physical activity you do has significant beneficial impacts on your mindset, on memory, on attention, and so forth. So mindfulness, however, mindfulness is a set of 3 skills that everybody has, but in order to be mindful, you need to be using these 3 skills at the same time. Wow. Okay? So these 3 skills we describe as concentration, clarity, and coolness. Yeah. And everybody, again, might have a different definition. So let me define what these 3 different words, what I mean by these 3 different words. So concentration, we would define as your ability to pay attention to whatever you want to pay attention to for any length of time. Interesting. So whether you pay attention to your breath for 20 minutes without distraction at all, or whether you're paying attention to what's going through your mind, or whether you're paying attention to watching the tennis ball, or whether you're paying attention to listening to my voice right now, or whether you're paying attention to whether the recording is going great and you're moving your attention from listening to me to looking at the computer, wherever you move your attention to, and for whatever period of time you choose to keep your attention there. Yeah. That is what we define as concentration within mindfulness.
How interesting. And I might add that I had this thing on this monitor over here. It was some kind of video that kept popping up, or I don't know what it was. And I was like, get rid of that thing, because I couldn't concentrate on what you were saying. It kept hitting me in the side of my eye. Okay.
So that's a perfect example.
Yes,
okay. So that is a subcategory of concentration, which is called executive attention. Executive attention is your ability to pay attention to what you want to pay attention to, which right now is my voice, while you're getting distracted by something. It could be internal distractions, your thoughts or how you feel, but it could be external distractions, like on your secondary screen, a window popping up.
Right.
So you're getting distracted by that.
Yes.
And if your executive attention improves through training, then you would get less distracted. Obviously, for humans, athletes, very important, right? There's an indefinite amount of distractions going on at all the time, and you need to improve your ability to not get distracted, to not have your attention pulled if you don't want it to go there, as often.
Yes, very, very, very interesting, because now, and I won't go, my temptation, I think I told you before, is to talk about tennis because I absolutely love tennis. But I will just ask about this example, and that, we see all the time as watching tennis and listening to commentators, and then watching somebody sort of a tennis player who's breaking down, let's say emotionally or something like this, or becomes very obvious that they've sort of lost their way during their game. And so your idea of this executive attention would apply to even that, correct? That they have this capacity, this ability to, when things are not even going well, for whatever reason, they can still get to that level of focus. Is that correct?
Yes, but it's not even that. It's everything. There is no situation where that would not apply.
Okay.
In general. It doesn't matter if it's tennis or soccer or us talking right now, or somebody in school, or you talking to your partner, or having a massage, right? Yeah. It's not, nobody is choosing to get distracted. So a distraction most of the time will come up in some shape or form sooner or later.
Yeah.
The question is, what is the distraction? Is it external? So somebody is screaming at you, and the screaming in the stick is distracting you. Or are you seeing something that's distracting you from what you want to pay attention to? You're playing basketball and you need to focus on shooting the ball. But there is 5,000 people basically trying to distract you right behind the basket. And you need to pay attention to shooting the ball and not to the 5,000 people making the noise and moving around. Yes. Right? It's all the same. Or you're having a massage and somebody is massaging you and it feels pleasant and you're relaxing, and all of a sudden you have a memory about a stressful situation that happened yesterday, and now instead of paying attention to the relaxation and the massage, you're just in your head and you're getting distracted by the memory and what's going to happen if.
Yeah. And you'd have to be a pretty extraordinary person to be able to constantly and intentionally, if you will, concentrate that much. Because when I brought up the tennis example, or the example you brought up about shooting, a free throw, the more critical the scenario, the more critical your focus is, right? I mean, you can't have this high level of concentration 24/7, or I use that just, accidentally. So, okay, but fair enough. So, but let me ask this. So you're a mindset coach. How do you help people then? How do you help them? What do you help them with? Obviously mindset.
Well, we only talked about one of the three skills though.
Well, that's true. We did. So, please tell me the other two first.
So the second skill is clarity, or what people describe as awareness. Sometimes people use the word mindfulness to describe just this one skill. Okay. Which is your ability to track in real time what it is that you're experiencing. Mm-hmm. And people sometimes confuse that with the first skill of paying attention to something. So directing your attention and keeping your attention on some experience, like my voice right now, that is concentration. But if you now notice any detail about what you are paying attention to, that's another skill. Now you are aware of what it is that you are hearing. And you can be aware of so many things. You can be aware of the content of what I'm saying, the story. You could be aware of whether I have an accent or not. You could be aware of whether I'm making grammatical mistakes while I'm talking. You could be aware of where is the sound coming from. You could be aware of what I'm saying pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral to you. you could be aware of whether when I'm talking, is it getting more silent and louder while I'm talking. So your ability to track what you are experiencing in real time is this other skill. But what exactly you track is something that you can choose. And most people don't realize that they have this superpower to choose what aspect of their experience they could be aware of. And because they don't know that they have the skill, they can't train the skill, and it doesn't improve that much. So when you, going back to the basketball example, you're shooting a free throw. Yes, the player needs to be paying attention to shooting the ball into the hoop. And what is it that the person needs to be tracking now in real time?
Interesting. I see.
Right?
That. Yeah.
So you need to be tracking in real time whether you're relaxed. You need to be tracking in real time how you're feeling, to let your body do what it can naturally do after having trained this for hundreds and hundreds of thousands of times, this movement, right? Are you noticing that you're tense in your arm because you might be nervous from all of the noise that you're getting distracted by, right? So now we're moving into concentration. Then when you notice that detail, that's awareness. You're aware that there's tension. Now this awareness allows you to relax your arm. Relaxing your arm is not awareness. Then now you're doing an activity, but your awareness of being tense allows you to change, to act in your best interest. So now you're giving yourself the ability to perform more optimally because you are using the skill of awareness, clarity, to notice the most relevant aspects of what you need to be doing right now. You could also be noticing whether it's cold or hot, but that's not going to help you right now.
Right.
You could be noticing feeling the ball.
Right.
That might be helpful, but if you're noticing the shape of the ball, that's not helpful anymore. Right? So people don't realize in tennis a lot of times the problem is somebody says, you need to really look at the ball, right? Which is correct. It is the most important thing in tennis is to give almost all of your attention, not all, but as much as possible to watching the ball. But people don't realize what detail they need to notice when they watch the ball. They need to watch the trajectory of the ball, and they need to watch how the ball has been hit by the opponent. These two pieces of information will allow your brain to predict where the ball is going to go more accurately. And then your body can move into the position where your brain has predicted the ball is going to be. But if you're not watching the ball with enough attention, or you're watching whether the ball is round or the color of the ball, you're still watching the ball, but you're not tracking information that is relevant to your performance.
Yeah, man, that's crazy, Christian. That's very, very interesting. I've never heard this sort of thing because it makes sense. I think I told you that, not even close to your level, but I coach a Middle Tennessee school tennis team, and I'm fairly astute when it comes to the coaching part. But boy, what you're telling me there is really fascinating. I honestly didn't even know that. And I can see what you're saying there. That's not just what you're watching or, that you're watching, but what you're watching, as to, very fascinating, and I will say that, it's one of the things that I've always noticed about, for instance, Federer. I know others do that, but he makes it so crystal clear that he's got his when he hits the ball forehand, he's still looking over here after he hits. It's very fascinating. So that's great. Okay, so then what's number 3, Christian?
Number 3 is a skill I call coolness. People call it equanimity, traditionally openness, allowing something, right? Non-judgment, which I don't like that term, but it basically is your ability to try to be equally open without trying to suppress or avoid experiences that are unpleasant, without trying to cling to experiences that are pleasant. And instead, it's a third option in the middle between those two, where you're trying to take a matter-of-fact stance towards what you're experiencing. What you're experiencing is still going to be pleasant or unpleasant, meaning you're going to like it or not like it, right? Or you're going to be indifferent to it. But whether something is pleasant or unpleasant should not dictate how you act. But if it does, then you are basically reacting and you are not acting in your best interest because you're not having a choice anymore.
Wow.
Your reaction might be the exact right thing to do. But if it's not something that you're doing intentionally or you're not noticing whether your reaction is actually in your best interest, then you do not have an ability to interfere in a way that is more beneficial to you. So if my reaction to an experience is the most beneficial one, then I can just react. But if I notice that my reaction, internally how I feel and now what I would do based on that reaction is not in my best interest and not in the best interest of somebody else, then with this ability to be cool, I would now be able to allow this to be there. I have this desire to do this and I really don't like it, but I don't have to act on it. I will act in my best interest and I will not react to just how I feel, what I would want to do.
Wow. You know, I certainly, it's easy to think about sports and how, you know, these critical times come, match point, whatever you want to call it. You know, you know, I watch a lot of football, American football, and you know, watching these last second tense times where it's a win or loss thing. But I also think about, Christian, people, let's just say, you know, we'll say regular people, if you will, for the purposes of this discussion, somebody that's going for a job interview where they might feel that same level of tension and distraction. This goes along with what you're saying, right? About keeping this coolness in a time that's very tense and very difficult, maybe, to work through your emotions.
Oh yeah, 100%. Also, and just in regards to, like, you know, normal people or average people,
You know,
or this, I'm like, the only difference really between people that are having skills that, you know, allow them to make a lot of money with it, or that allow them to be admired by other people and so forth, is really just that. They have a certain set of skills, okay? One skill or multiple skills that they have naturally been given, or that they have developed, or a combination of that, of these two. And now these particular skills, they have perfected to whatever degree that they're at that moment. But it has absolutely nothing to do with, like, the people, right? The human being. We are all the same. Everybody has certain strengths. Everybody has weaknesses. Everybody has the ability to improve in most things in our life, right? It doesn't matter if you are the most successful human being intellectually and physically. There is still way more things that you're not good at than that you are good at. And the big difference a lot of times for with people that might feel like they're average is more that they haven't discovered what it is that they're so passionate about, or maybe they were so in such a terrible situation that they never had the chance to go after what they're passionate about because of their life circumstances, that they never had this ability to develop skills that they have been naturally given and that they love and just would like to spend all day. So a lot of these people that are, you know, very good at what they do, there's a lot of luck involved, and not everybody in the world has so much luck, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to disagree with what you said, you know, and of course, I certainly wasn't belittling anybody that might be normal. I guess I maybe should have said maybe more normal circumstances, but also, I mean, I guess my observation has been is that there are people who seem to have extraordinary levels of whatever that is, and certainly it goes into a lot of hard work. But you know, I appreciate what you're saying, though, that each of us, and I completely agree, have a unique set of skills and abilities and competencies that we can develop, and these sorts of things, you know. And since you brought that up, I guess I will ask this then. do you have, this is a bit of a side note, but do you have thoughts about that, about how people can more realize their potential or more realize those things that they could excel at? It's a $64,000 question. People ask all the time, I don't know what I'm passionate about. I don't know what I'm good at. I don't know what I want to do. What are your thoughts about that, Christian? It's very interesting.
Yeah. So that really goes very much into the realm of mindfulness, where mindfulness is very beneficial, right? Because what these three skills help you with, when you improve your ability to pay attention to whatever you want to pay attention to, and when you improve your ability to track what you are experiencing in real time, that includes how you're feeling, that includes what is going through your mind, that includes your life circumstances. And when you improve your ability to not be in such an antagonistic relationship with everything that's happening around you and inside of you, okay? And you're trying to kind of ride the waves, and the waves might be sometimes really big and challenging, and sometimes it's kind of like nice and easy. Then you, a side effect, and it could even be, your practice could be tailored for this, will be that you will start to understand yourself better. Why do you start to understand yourself better? Because when you are tracking what is going on inside of you, like what thoughts you have, how you feel, and precisely what feeling is it that I'm feeling right now? Where is that feeling? What is going through my mind? I can track that in real time. I see something, and all of a sudden I have a pleasant reaction. I start to feel excited. And I'm starting to feel excited because I see somebody at the beach surfing. And now I'm tracking that in real time, and I will see, I will understand. That is something where my system reacts positively. That is pleasant for me. Somehow there is a pleasant emotional reaction inside of me. Just that. I didn't plan anything. When I do this activity, though, if I have to sit in front of the computer and do a Zoom call, I have an unpleasant reaction. Most people try to neglect what is it that the reaction they have. They just try to go with their head through the wall. But yes, of course, you can't do everything that you like and nothing that you don't like. But if you can start to notice that a lot of the things that you do, you have an unpleasant reaction towards, and everything that you have a pleasant reaction towards, that is good for you, which is very important. You can have pleasant reactions and you can like things that have a very negative impact for you. Then we're going into addiction and so forth, right? Negative behavioral patterns. But you can enjoy things that are beneficial for you. And if you don't notice those in real time because you're not aware enough, because you're just caught up in your mind and you're distracted or you're mind wandering, then it's very difficult to realize what it is that you love. What is your passion? What don't you like? Who are the people in your life that feed you with positivity, that help you, that inspire you? Who are the people in your life that have a negative impact on you, that pull you down, that tell you you can't do something? You're experiencing all of that. You know it, but you don't pay enough attention to realize that actually impacts me in such a significant way that it alters the choices I'm making in my life.
Wow. And that maybe once you start doing that, then I imagine you begin to even see some patterns of things that seem to really lift you up and start to maybe home in on some of these ideas. That's very, very interesting what you're saying there. Again, taking this whole idea, even mindfulness, to another level, more practical level. I remember speaking a few years ago to some very young college students, just entering college. And many of them, not one asked, but many of them wondered, I don't know what I want to do. I don't know what I want to study, and it was, my response was something along the same lines as you, that there are some people that notice it earlier, or they follow in the path of their parents, or whatever the case might be. And others, and I didn't use the term mindfulness, but I suggested to them to really start paying attention to their college surroundings and asking interesting questions and noticing things that like, that may be something that a professor said that piqued your interest. And so then maybe you notice that, so go ask them about it. In other words, my thought was along the lines of what you're saying: pay attention to what's happening around you, especially in that first and second year, and you may discover some things. Is that along the lines of what you're suggesting here?
Yes, for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
The thing is that everybody has this ability to
Yeah.
pay attention to what they want. Everybody has the ability to be aware. If you would never be aware, you would be unconscious, right? So obviously, nobody who is a healthy human being is unconscious 24/7.
Correct.
And everybody has the ability to try to be open towards certain experiences, but not others. So everybody has those skills. But because it is a set of skills, these skills need to be trained in order to improve. Like everybody has the ability to walk and run. If you have a healthy human body and you didn't have an accident, or from birth, something happened that doesn't allow you to walk and run, then you can walk. And the older you get, the more you have walked and the more you ran. But the older you get, the slower you become and the less fit you become. If you did not do a systematic and consistent training specifically for running. So if you want to learn to run a marathon, almost everybody can accomplish that, but not if you just are 40 years old and you never ran in your life, even though you have walked thousands and thousands of miles in your life, and you're using your ability, the skill to walk and run, you're using it every day. But it never gets to the point where it would improve in a way that you could run a marathon, because you didn't train your ability to run that far and for that fast in a systematic and consistent way. And it's the same with the skills of concentration, clarity, and coolness. You're using those skills all day, all the time, but you use them sporadically, and you use these skills unintentionally. And that is why they're not improving nearly as much as they would. People that use them in a way that is unintentional but systematically, which happens a lot, all pro athletes that never did any mindfulness and mindset training, any doctor, anybody in any profession where you really need all of your attention on a certain task. What is it that you have been doing? You have been training your ability to pay attention to whatever you're doing, and in that environment, this ability has improved over time, but not in others. So when you start to train your ability to pay attention to what you want, to track your experience in real time, and to try to be equally open to what you're experiencing in a systematic and consistent way, these abilities will improve so much that it's hard for people to even grasp how good your ability to pay attention can become, because it's not the experience that most humans have, because they have not trained these skills. But anybody that has trained these skills, it's like you're living a different life now. You're still the same person. You have the same nervous system, you the same personality that is given to you and has developed over your life. But all these skills are so different over years of training that to be you starts to be very different. You're not such a slave anymore of what you're experiencing. You're not a slave of your mind. You're not a slave of how you feel when you get anxious and afraid. You're not a slave of when you feel the urge to do this or that, right? You start to have more freedom to experience life in the way you want. You can start to think about what you want to think about more often. You can start to appreciate things that bring you fulfillment more often. And now life starts to take a very different trajectory. It doesn't matter if you're a professional athlete or professional in something else, or you're doing a profession that you enjoy or might not enjoy so much, but you're forced to be doing it in order to live your life. That applies to every single person.
You know, one of the things that I am finding so important about what you're saying, and perhaps is maybe lesson number one or whatever for those who are listening or watching this video is to recognize that it is a skill. That if you don't understand it, to your point, you've already made a great point. If you don't realize it's a skill, you don't realize it can be honed. You don't realize that it can be developed. And so, I think I hear this all the time, as not as a tennis coach, but as a personal growth coach, where people just say, hey, I'm just not that type of person that is very self-aware. And your response would be to, okay, but it is a skill. You can develop it. You can become more correct. This is an important concept in and of itself, that you recognize that these things that you're talking about, the developing of your mindset, mindfulness, clarity, these sorts of things, is a competency. It's something you can develop and get better at.
100%.
Wow.
And the moment I realized that your ability to pay attention to what you want, your ability to be aware, and your ability to not be so averse and so clingy towards your experience, that is something, that is a skill, and that is something that you can train. My life changed completely. I never realized that until I was in my later 20s. And the moment I realized that is a skill that I can train, I dedicated every single second of every single day that I could to developing these skills, to understanding these skills. There is so many people in the world right now and over the course of humankind that have taught these skills, that have developed these skills to degrees that is, for most people, unimaginable. Unimaginable how one can be at ease with life. Unimaginable how aware one could be.
Is there
You're not living life from one or two perspectives anymore. You start to develop this ability to shift your perspective at will. You can start to zoom out and perceive experiences from a much broader, wider perspective, put it into context with the rest of life, with other people. You can zoom in within perspective, right? Not visually saying zooming in, but you can really get absorbed within an experience. And it almost feels like you're merging with what you're doing. It's like there's no me anymore that is playing tennis. It's just like tennis is happening, right? When people describe the state of flow, that is kind of what, right?
I was just gonna ask
and you're
that.
able to kind of move into these perspectives. And there's so many perspectives that life can be perceived from, that it is one of the greatest gifts that a human being could really give themselves. But if they don't know, like you said, that it is a skill that I could develop, then you're stuck. If you realize it's a skill, but you're not interested, that's no problem. Like everybody should be doing what they want, right? And it's not a choice of yours sometimes. But if it is interesting to you and you've realized like, oh, I would love to improve my ability to pay attention to what I want to pay attention to. I want to improve my ability to, when I'm anxious, to not be suffering so much. So I'm anxious. I'm noticing the feeling, but like, it's not such a big bummer anymore. Bad things are not as bad anymore. Nice things will be nicer. I want that. And if that's something that you want, well, there's a mechanism and a system that you can implement that many people are teaching for different aspects of life, for sports, for work, for schools, for the educational system, for the healthcare system, and for parenting, for any part of life where these skills are incorporated specifically to what is interesting to you. And you are on a very different trajectory already all of a sudden in your life.
That is so interesting. I even think about something as, I don't want to say simple, but as something as ordinary as studying. Whether you're studying for school or studying for an exam or studying for a test or whatever, or studying to improve a skill, for instance, I can easily say that for me, one of the things that I always struggle with is going from one one thing to another, getting my mind settled into this next thing that I'm working on. So let's just say it's two different arenas that I'm involved with. Here maybe I'm trying to write my book, and then I have to shift over here and think about some kind of a design or something. So they're completely different. That for me, it seems to me that it takes longer to get my mind into the game here. I'm like, okay, I got to move away from that and do this. And I think about that in all aspects of my life, not just those two arenas. So, for a person like me, those are the kinds of things that I want to develop, how to get, again, sort of a honed in quicker, or how to shift, how to compartmentalize, or whatever you want to say. Well, listen, Christian, I want to ask you real quick, because I know that you also practice meditation. How does that, how do you, tell us how you practice it and how that blends into the ideas, beyond the obvious of mindfulness or mindset or whatever the case might be. How do you use this to improve your life, or maybe you help others also in that realm?
So just to clarify for everybody that's listening, mindfulness is a kind of meditation. Meditation is just a very broad term, like sport. Okay. And there's many different kinds of meditation, whether it's mindfulness meditation or transcendental meditation or whatever there might be. And basically, when somebody says I meditate, that tells you very little. It's like saying, yeah, I do sport. So you go, okay, you're doing some activity, like you get an idea, but like you don't really know at all. Are you playing tennis? You're playing golf? Are you swimming? Are you doing yoga? It's all very different, but it's all beneficial. And it's the same with meditation, right? Okay. So let's stick to mindfulness meditation, okay, which means if you're practicing mindfulness meditation, then you are using these three skills: concentration, clarity, and coolness. Okay. And you're using them on purpose at the same time, not one after the other. Now I try to pay attention to something, but I don't try to be cool with it. And I'm like, yeah, I really hate it, but I'm still paying attention to it, right? That would not be mindful. Now you're just paying attention to using one skill, but it's not mindfulness, right? So when I practice mindfulness meditation, now there is an infinite amount of techniques that you can practice, okay? There's standard techniques that people learn, like paying attention to your breath, okay? That's not breath work, again. People get confused. You try to breathe a certain way. It's very beneficial. Learning to regulate your breath allows you to regulate your nervous system, okay? So you can activate your parasympathetic nervous system or your sympathetic nervous system at will. So I highly encourage everybody to learn different breathing protocols. But meditating on your breath is very different. That has nothing to do with trying to breathe a certain way. It's about using these three skills to direct them to the sensations of the breath and paying attention to that and trying to be at ease with what it is that you're noticing within what you're paying attention to and outside. So now, if we have an infinite amount of techniques, because there's an infinite amount of things that I can pay attention to, right? Like playing tennis and watching the ball, I can do that in a mindful way. Playing basketball, you talking to me, we can be mindful right now. So let's put the techniques to the side and let's maybe take the approach of, okay, like what are the different kind of modalities that I can practice being mindful? So most people think, okay, I'm meditating, or I'm being mindful if I sit down, everything is quiet around me, my eyes are closed, maybe I put in some nice music or, some raindrops, and I sit in a lotus position and no distractions and my mind is empty. Okay. None of what I just said has anything to do with the three skills. So the easiest way to think about like, oh, I'm being mindful, I'm meditating, is, are you using these three skills or not? It doesn't matter if you're sitting with your eyes closed, and everything is quiet and there's not one thought in your mind, or if you're on a construction zone and there's a jackhammer next to you and your mind is going crazy, and you're moving around, then you're still able to meditate if you understand like what technique to do and you have improved the skills enough, because you pay attention to something. Let's say there's a jackhammer and your mind is going crazy, but somebody is explaining something to you. Okay. So I direct my attention to what they're saying. And now I'm trying to really notice the content of what they're saying. And I try to be cool with the jackhammer, which is really challenging. And I'm feeling really upset because of the jackhammer. I try to be cool with that feeling. Yeah. So now I am doing a mindful meditation in this scenario. I can, of course, be mindful also when everything is quiet and pleasant. The point is not that sitting in silence with your eyes closed and an empty mind is not good. Of course, that's a pleasant experience. It just has nothing to do with meditation. So you can practice basically in stillness. Let's just say you're sitting and it's quiet around you. Or you can practice in motion. So just in life, in any situation. Okay? Then most people think, oh, if I meditate, I need to meditate for 10 minutes at least. Okay? Yeah, of course, the longer you meditate, the better, because the more you train the skills, the more they will improve. But you can meditate for 10 minutes or 30 minutes, but you can also meditate for 30 seconds. You can just right now, while you're listening to me, you can now really choose to pay attention to what I'm saying. And now more specifically, you use your clarity to try to notice not the content, but try to notice whether I am speaking louder and more silent. So you are now choosing, because of my instruction, to pay attention to a specific aspect.
I'm literally doing that as you talk.
Yes, exactly. And now, if there are distractions going on because of what's going through your mind and you have an opinion about something, like, oh, that makes sense, that's interesting, just allow that to be there, those thoughts. Don't push them away, but return your attention back to my voice and then specifically about whether it's loud or silent. And right now, you did that for 15 seconds and you were doing a mindfulness meditation. Okay? Wow. So now it is in meditation during an activity, and it is something we call a micro hit rather than formal practice. So formal practice would be longer, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 5 hours. Micro hits would be when you practice less than 10 minutes, 15 seconds, 5 minutes, whatever it might be, right? So there's more ways to slice and dice how to use these skills, but that is definitely one helpful way to not like overload everybody with like, you can meditate in any moment, and you can meditate for any length of time. Nothing is right or wrong. Different things have different benefits, and it depends on what you want to accomplish. And maybe meditating for you is better, but maybe meditating for shorter and more frequently is better for you, right? I can't know.
Man, that's fascinating. I love what you just said, and it makes so much sense to me. You know, I will tell you this. I just have a couple more questions for you that, and I don't know exactly what this means, but I want to present it to you. So there's a show on YouTube that I used to watch when I had some time, more time. And it was a man who lived in Toronto, in Ontario, and he worked with corporate for 25 years and just got sick of it and just couldn't deal with the rat race and decided that he was going to move 4 hours north into the wilderness and begin building a log cabin. So to make a long story short, I think it's called My Self-Reliance. It's a fascinating show. I highly recommend it to you, by the way, Christian. You'll find it fascinating. So anyways, he did that. He went out there and he began to build this cabin, but then he started building all the things that he would build to help build him the cabin. So he built a kitchen out there. It was everything that he did. He made it from hand, and he very rarely used any sort of technology. It was almost always just hand tools. And like even when he cut big pieces of wood, it was always a hand saw. It was fascinating. But here's my point to that. He didn't speak much at all. Very rarely did he talk. It was him and his golden retriever. He had a family actually that still lived in Ontario, and sooner or later, Toronto, he's going to bring them up. But having said that, he didn't speak much at all, but he had these extraordinary cameras and audio systems. And so you literally sat there watching him. And I'm telling you, Christian, it was like this man would immediately go into the flow state, get into this meditative state, and you could watch for an hour or 2 hours and just be he would bring you into this state with him. It was fascinating. So I did this for about 3 hours. I watched quite a bit of it on and off. And then I remember one day I went into my kitchen and I opened a drawer and I suddenly was noticing all of these sounds. I noticed taking the utensils out, and I went into this state of mind that I noticed this. And I was like, I've never noticed me taking a fork out of the drawer, completely hearing what that sounded like. And this went on for about 5 minutes. What is that? I mean, do you see where I'm going? That was
wonderful,
fascinating.
That's a wonderful example of a heightened state of clarity.
Okay. Wow.
So it's basically I'm not saying this in a way to diminish it, but to just put it into words.
No, of course.
You have 3 skills: your ability to pay attention to what you want without getting distracted, right? For any length of time. Your ability to track what you're experiencing in real time. And these are skills. And the skills, like the physical skills, sometimes you're more tired, sometimes not. They sometimes peak. So your skill of clarity, of being aware, got into a heightened state for 5 minutes. And it naturally happens. It's fantastic for you to experience, not to understand intellectually what I'm saying, but for you to understand it experientially. It's like, oh, that is clarity. That is what it's like if this skill improves. Wow. And I could learn to tailor that to any other experience, not just to notice whether the fork is what the sound makes when I pick up the fork and put it down, which on the one side is amazing. It shows if you pay enough attention and you notice enough detail about what you're experiencing, any experience can start to transform into something mind-boggling and amazing, right? Just lifting up a fork all of a sudden starts to be an experience that you're remembering to this day. You're like, wow,
that's right.
A fork, right?
So
now when you learn to tailor this skill to other experiences, right? So this experience is very pleasant and insightful, but you can't really take advantage of it so much in order to improve your performance.
Yeah.
But what if you could do the exact same thing with your mind? You would notice that much detail that you noticed about the fork and the sound, about what's going through your mind. And it's not just like, oh yeah, there's like all these thoughts and you notice like a thought here and there and it's just rambling, but you actually notice every thought and how it comes and how long it stays and whether it's pleasant and what kind of thought it is. Or you notice this much detail about how you feel.
Wow.
You feel happy. And all of a sudden, you will start to notice so much detail about what your experience of happiness actually feels like. Yeah. Where do I feel happy? Is it in my arms? Is it in my face? Oh, this is the feeling of happiness. There's tingling in my cheeks. There is kind of an openness in my, whatever it might be. Or an unpleasant experience, like anxiety. And you have a constricting feeling in your chest or in your solar plexus, and it's pulling in, and it's unpleasant. But you're noticing so much detail about this unpleasant experience that you describe as anxiety that it starts to be interesting. And in the moment something starts to be interesting and you become curious to it, it is the gateway into coolness. And all of a sudden, when you're cool with the experience because you're curious about it and it's interesting, you stop fighting the experience.
Yes.
And when you're not fighting an experience, then you're not suffering anymore. And all of a sudden, your entire life turns around when you start to experience these things in a way that you just described.
Wow. Wow. So let me ask you this, I want to ask you about, where people can find you and what they can do. But so who do you work with now primarily, Christian?
So I work with companies, with different companies, basically, in bigger kind of groups and workshops is one thing. I work with Adidas. In Adidas, I work in kind of different capacities. I work with a lot of individuals that don't work for Adidas, but that are community members, athletes, not professional only, every person that just wants to run or do yoga or anything. And I teach them these skills, sometimes individually, sometimes in groups. And we have weekly programmings, all across LA. Then I have a website, mindsizsports.com, where you can learn what we've been talking about online at your own pace. It's an 8-week program that you can do at your own pace, not faster, but you can do it slower. Okay. And it's, I don't know, $400, I think. But if anybody can't afford it, then please just write an email and we will make it available to anybody who would like to do this but can't pay for it because they don't have the means for it.
It's very generous of you.
And then I have another company called Maverick Community, where I am trying to help with my partner all fitness and wellness professionals to be able to help even more people by helping to scale their business and taking everything away from them that they couldn't do by themselves.
Wow, that's different than the rest of what you do. So you're a business owner and a entrepreneur and a coach. And are you doing any coaching, tennis coaching at all? I'm curious.
Yeah, I play with some people still also.
Yeah.
But very, very little compared to what it used to be. I used to teach 60 hours a week for many years. And now it's not imaginable.
Well, this is fascinating. Please, if you will, again, Christian, tell people where they can find you, and please invite them to come learn more about you.
Yeah, so on Instagram, you can find me, straka.la. My personal website is also www.straka.la. And from there, you can go to basically everything that I do, whether I, coach from Adidas or Maverick or Mindsize or anything else. You can kind of go from there and see if that's something that sounds interesting to you. You can kind of just follow wherever the road will lead.
Well, that's fascinating. I've had the fortune of listening to a few others who have invited you as a guest, and your message is incredibly consistent, and the depth that you bring is pretty amazing. But the other thing that I will say about that, Christian, is not only is your depth amazing, but you lay it out in a way that that anybody can understand, and I appreciate that about you. Christian, thank you so much for taking the time, for sharing your insights and your expertise and your understanding of things. And I hope people will look you up and learn more about you and perhaps engage you. So thank you so much for being with me.
Thank you so much. It was a real pleasure.
Thank you. Mine as well.